What up, everyone? Welcome back to Blade Bias. Let's give some love to a trainer that I haven't given love to in a while, which, I guess you could say about half of my collection at this point, but, that's how it goes when you're covering new stuff. Maybe this is on the wrong day. Maybe this isn't. I figure now that I'm the only one uploading here, there's no reason to really stick to an every other day schedule if I miss a video. So, like, before I would miss a video and then have to wait 2 days to upload it. This one, I can just upload it the day after, So, I don't know, maybe you're seeing this on the wrong day, maybe you're seeing it on the right day. That's why, but I wanted to talk about my summer. As you can see, we're back in the bright apartment that isn't the taker of all things light with the black carpet. And that summer was very good for me getting into other hobbies, specifically these bad boys, IEMs and audio in general. And the process of getting into that hobby has kind of fundamentally changed the way that I view the Balisong community and is pushing a lot of what I want to do in the future pretty heavily. So first off, let's give the brief introduction. I've always been into audio in some way. I can't say I was an audiophile because most of my collection, like this is the best I had in my collection. These are the Samsung Galaxy Buds Pro. I have owned them and carried them with me every day for about 2 years now. I love them. But my audio setup never really went past that. At home, I use like a SteelSeries headset that's like $50. At school, I have the Sony XM4s, which are great consumer headphones, but not exactly known for their audio quality. But back in, I want to say like 2020, 2021, me, Ty, and a couple other friends were very into audio, listening to headphones. Pretty nice headphones, not like anything crazy, but $300-$400 price range maybe, and less because we're high school students. But we talked about headphones a lot. Audio was a big thing that we talked about, even though I didn't really own anything that was too crazy in the audio realm. It was still very interesting to me. So a few months back, even actually before I even left for the summer, I started getting into IEMs in a more general way, like watching videos about them as more of just a passing interest. And I developed an interest for these, the 7 Hertz Timeless. These I'm interested in because they are planar magnetics in an in an IEM shell. Very interesting. I won't bore you with any of the details, even though I could talk about these things probably for hours. But planar magnetic just means that's the technology that's inside that creates the sound, the speaker, if you will. These over here, the Moondrop Blessing 3s, use a different speaker technology, and they actually use 2 different speaker technologies, balanced armatures and dynamic drivers, to create sound with a bunch of crazy, physics and sound acoustic stuff. But besides that, the Timeless basically were they're like the Vulp. Think of it that way. The Vulp started the war in the sub-$100 category. Now we have an explosion of sub-$100 Balisongs. That's kind of what these were. These were the first planar magnetics that were like really good, that were relatively cheap in the IEM scale. These retail for like $200. Not cheap, but they have spawned so many other planar magnetics in the $100, $200, $250 price range. There's essentially like a whole war of them for a while. But I got the Timeless, I got more into audio, and as I got more into audio, I realized, wow, it is so nice to have a hobby that doesn't bother other people and that no one else cares about. I can go out in public with these and put these in my ears all day long, and you know what? No one is going to question me once. No one's even going to give me a weird look. The weirdest look I'm going to get is probably from people being like, wow, why is he using wired earbuds? That's kind of cringe. But there's no people thinking that I have a knife. There's no dropping this on the floor and annoying my neighbors. There's none of that. It's so amazing to just be able to enjoy a hobby without anyone else judging you for zero reason. But that's not the main thing. The main thing is audiophiles, and I hesitate to use that term because the audiophile community, it's crazy that I'm about to say this, is one of the communities that I would define as worse than the Balisong community. The Balisong community is great, don't get me wrong, but there are some very toxic, draining, irritating parts of it that just drive people bonkers and are just, well, drive me bonkers at least. and are just so toxic and mean for no reason. The audiophile community is even worse. The small interaction that I've had with it in Discord servers and stuff like that is just elitists talking about things that no one else understands and no one cares to explain, and then attacking each other for personal preference. It's like the Balisong community, but worse. But besides the point, the YouTubers, and I mean, this isn't really their fault, but the YouTubers also engage in, saying these phrases, and no one cares to explain them. Because you know what audiophiles do is they just spew out this word soup that means nothing if you have no context for any of it. Things like bright, dark, timbre, honky, soundstage, open back, planar magnetic, dynamic driver. They're just spewing words that if you don't understand what they mean, you don't have the context for them, you don't know what they're talking about. I remember watching IEM reviews and they're saying like, oh, this is a very bright headset. And I'm like, what does that mean? I can kind of guess. Like, you can make an inference, but you don't know for sure, so you're always questioning yourself. So I had to seek out other articles to finally explain these things, and it turns out bright means more tilted towards the treble or the higher frequencies that the headset can put out. I keep saying headset. It's just easier than saying IEM, I think, or headphone or earbud, whatever. I know there are people who are mad about that, but whatever. And it made me realize that we kind of do the same thing, although to a lesser degree. Words like handle bias, blade bias, neutral, ass weight, tip weight. There's so many things that we just say and we don't explain, which is probably making the onboarding process for the Balisong community just way worse. It's probably very difficult to get into this when no one cares to explain what all these things that we're saying are. And so I've been trying to figure out a way to do that goes beyond just making a YouTube video, because a YouTube video it's static. You can't change it. There's no dynamic change to a YouTube video. If there's a new term that we come up with, which we'll talk about later, I can't add to the YouTube video. I'd have to make another one, and then people would have to go find that too, and it just creates this big web of you have to find this video and then go to this video and then go to this video. I would rather just have a static document. I know Buffalo Dingus has a very good spreadsheet that explains things pretty well. I think it's Buffalo Dingus at least. I'm so sorry if it isn't. But I want something like that. I want a more standardized website that can tell us more about, they can tell beginners more about what these terms that we're saying are, that we can just link in the description and it's perfect. It's great. And we can update it whenever we please. I've been working on it a little bit. I don't think it's anything that I'm anywhere close to coming out with, but baby steps. And I'm guilty of this too. It's really tough to have a full conversation with a beginner when all they want to know is, would you rather get the Vulp or the Kraken Trainer V3? And it's like, bro, I've already made a whole video on why I can't answer that question. If you send me this versus that questions and you just get a short response, it's because you just can't answer those questions. Because you're a beginner. I don't know if you like handle bias or all this stuff. I'm not going to recommend that you buy a $250 Balisong that's relatively handle bias that some people don't like if you don't like handle bias. So I just tell people to get the Vault because it's cheap. It gives you what you need. You get the bit, you get the lube, you get all that stuff. And it has an okay balance. The balance isn't perfect, I agree. But the Vault is just one of the better beginner packages that you can get out there. So I just recommend if you're a beginner, buy the Vault. It simplifies things quite a bit. But that's something that we got to change. The onboarding process isn't great. Another thing is that IEMs and audio in general have the frequency response curves. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a graph that plots the volume of each frequency that the headphone puts out in its most basic sense. So you can sort of see how headphones sound. A lot of people in the audiophile community are going to crucify me for saying that. Again, very elitist culture over there. But that's generally what it is. You can see how headphones sound. You get a vibe of them. And you can also do demos where people get microphones, put them in like heads, and you can hear how the audio sounds. You get compression and through YouTube and over the internet, and you're listening through your own gear, but it's good at getting like a vibe. And that's another thing we don't have. You can't get a vibe of how a Balisong is to flip unless you flip it. Because all we have to describe is handle bias, neutral, blade bias. Sometimes you get a little bit of ass weight and tip weight thrown in there. but that's about it. It's not a very granular scale. So what me and a few others, notably Remshi and Kanto, have been kind of working on and off is a new way to describe not just balance, but weight distribution. For example, the Nemesis, I would call it a bottom-weighted neutral. The balance itself is neutral. You can fan, roll over, do pretty much anything that you want on it. But there's a lot of weight at the bottom of the handles, which means that momentum and rollovers are going to feel especially good, despite the fact that it still fans pretty well, because of that extra weight in the bottom of the handles. And if you've ever flipped a bottom-weighted Balisong, like a great example is the Olympus Industries Prime, there's so much weight at the end of the handles, very handle bias, bottom-weighted handle bias, sorry. I'm still getting used to it myself. Where you can get the vibe of what it is to flip. You get a little more granularity in that description. Now, this is not the final version of it. I've been asking for feedback from multiple people who I haven't heard back from, which I'm not calling them out. I get it. They're busy. But I want to get more feedback from people. I want to work on it a little more before we fully kind of launch it. But I think we're onto something. I think we are onto something with describing things in a more granular way that can give more experienced flippers. I mean, this isn't really for beginners because you have to know what bottom weight is and all that. But it'll give more experienced flippers the ability to translate how a Balisong flips to each other much easier. And I think it's just going to go a long way into improving the hobby in general. If both of these ever come out, the beginner, the onboarding process, and this description thing. So that's me just spitballing about how IEMs have changed my view on the Balisong hobby. Don't worry, I still love Balisongs. I still love flipping them. But, you know, it's just kind of nice to have a hobby like this, even though the community sucks. There's just a lot more that's a little better about it. I've also taken some inspiration from IEM YouTubers for the next segment of Blade Bias, which I will hopefully be able to reveal soon-ish. I have to work on the branding and the editing of it, but we'll get there eventually, right? Because eventually I say for everything. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.